Welcome to the Arete Podcast, the podcast created to help senior executives and the organisations they lead live up to their full potential. Join us for cutting-edge interviews with leading senior executive and board members across all industry sectors, and for practical tips to accelerate your executive career. And now, here's your host, Richard Treeks.
Fantastic to finally get you along. We've been talking about this for a little while. And I think that you and I first met, you came and did a presentation to a Vistage group that I'm a member of about, 3 or 4 months ago now.
Yeah, that's right. That was a lovely, lovely time being there with you guys.
I really enjoyed what you had to say, and I wasn't familiar with EOS and the framework prior to that, although I think that I knew where it had sort of arisen from. But great to learn a little bit more about EOS today and about your role, because I think a lot of the people listening to this podcast who perhaps are founder leaders of their businesses, or indeed, that right-hand person running those businesses, will take a lot away from the EOS sort of methodology and so on. But before we get into that, just tell us a little bit about what you're doing currently professionally, what EOS is all about, and some of the other things you're involved with.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me. I'm really grateful to be here. I am born in Germany, so just have to say that up front, because I'm sure my accent is pretty strong still. But in terms of my professional background, I'm actually a health professional by trade. So love helping people, and it actually ties in beautifully with what I do now. I actually still help people. I help people run their business as well to have a better life. And how did I come across it? I had sort of moved into general management roles for quite some time. And at the time when I came across EOS, I was actually running a business with maybe 100 staff, so fairly well established. I had been around since 2002, so solid business, 8-figure turnover, 5 locations, China, all the states in Australia. But it was chaotic, so there was no leadership team. There was a very strong visionary leader, and that was sort of the biggest revelation that we had, that we thought, oh my God, how many ideas can you come up with per hour, per second? And that's sort of what I realized, is that I have always naturally, and that's probably why we get along, Richard, I've always gravitated to visionary leaders, because they bring the energy, they bring the fun, they have lots of ideas, and I just want to be part of it. But what I'm good at is executing, and EOS is basically what helped me become even better at executing a vision to really help people get what they want from the business. So that's my story. But in terms of professional background, I've honestly worked in so many different industries. So all started in health.
To cut you off. Why don't we sort of go back to where it all began and tell us, so born in Germany, so what brought you to Australia?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I was actually competing in kayaking at the time at a high level, and I had an injury, and I was relieved to have an injury, which really surprised me. So I think it was time to stop. I had done it for a long time, very successfully, applied for a scholarship, and came to Australia as a student. So did my master's, ended up doing my MBA here as well, and fell in love with the country, loved the outdoors, and loved the easy way of living. It's been wonderful.
Awesome. And so at that time that you moved here, you said you were studying. So this was prior to you, or whilst at the same time you were working in sports medicine?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And so did you find transitioning into the Australian, work environment substantively different to what you'd experienced over in Germany, or are there a lot of similarities?
Yeah, great question. The reason I actually got the scholarship was that Australia is quite different to Germany. So, Australia is actually quite advanced in how it looks at integrating people with disabilities. and really looking at creating, more looking at ability rather than disability. But otherwise, to be very honest, in terms of what I studied, it was very similar. So, but the health systems are different, yeah.
Okay. And so even, when you're talking about people living with disability, that is as compared to people living with injury.
That's correct. But I specialized in injury management, to be very clear. But I was referring to, disability. But I worked in exercise rehab, and I specialized in chronic pain. So people with chronic pain, really trying to get them to get back to work and live a good life.
Right. But you started to have this specialization or orientation towards people with disabilities.
That was one of the areas that I looked into while studying, yes.
Okay, sure. And so what took you then into sort of the entrepreneurial path of starting your own business?
Yeah, absolutely. So my partner actually founded our business in 2002. So it's a group of businesses that I've always been part of, just by simply living with him. But that's the business that in 2019 I then ran for many years. And I loved the change from coming from a multi-billion-dollar corporate, and the bureaucracy that comes with that, and being on leadership meetings there, to having a small business where you can make quick decisions and bringing in a system, but not losing that agility, if that makes sense.
Right.
So absolutely love entrepreneurial businesses where you can, systemize to, accelerate and get the most out of your people by, being clever about how you do things, but on the other side, being agile as well.
Right. And so then whilst you were in that role running that business, you first sort of were introduced to EOS. How did that happen?
Yeah, well, that's a great story. I was in Sydney at the time, and Daniel Davis, he's sort of known as the godfather of EOS in Australia. We came across him through our YPO network. So we're part of a peer group called YPO. Mm-hmm. And he brought EOS to Australia from America. And he just met with us, and he just blew us away with how he helped businesses get what they want and bring in structure. And like I said, we had a very successful business at the time, but very chaotic. I had actually tried to stay out of the business for a long time, not great always working with your partner. Mm-hmm. But with EOS, it really gave us that framework to do it well and create a strong leadership team where everyone is in the know-how, everyone is part of the journey, knows where we're going. And it really helped us shape that really good culture that was needed, especially because just after that COVID hit and we had all sorts of dramas, and we were very lucky to having implemented that just before that happened.
Okay, fantastic. So for people who are unfamiliar with EOS, as I was, as little as a few months ago, what does EOS actually stand for?
Yeah, it stands for Entrepreneurial Operating System. And it's really just a proven framework that's used globally by 300,000 different companies. I feel it's more like a leadership program that helps people get really good at three things. And it's really all around building confidence. So I work with leadership teams. I'm in a room all day with leadership teams to help them be really confident in, creating a really strong vision that's actually shared by all. So you can have that competitive edge, everyone rowing in the same direction and really knowing how to actually get there. Mm-hmm. But it's then more so about that traction component. There's a whole book written on traction by Gino Wickman. And that's what I'm so passionate about, is it's all well and good to have a vision. But a lot of the time, vision without traction, we say, is hallucination. So how do you actually make it happen? That execution piece, how do you bring in discipline? It sounds boring. Being German, though, we're very disciplined people. There's a lot of benefits in installing some sort of level of discipline, because it actually creates freedom. Because when you're clear on your priorities and you have people accountable for all areas of your business, it actually frees you up. And ultimately, I think that's what everybody wants, that freedom, to have time to live their life, to focus on what their superpower is. So it's around that vision and traction, but also about team. It's about team health. So I see so many leadership teams that are dysfunctional, and they often don't realize it, funnily enough. But sometimes they operate in silos, or there might be really clear conflict, or they might just not humming as well as they could. And that's the most beautiful thing about the work I do, is having everybody in the same room. Because as the leadership team goes, so does the rest of the organization. And the impact that you have when you can really solve issues, and you would be very familiar with that, that issue resolution piece that you go through in Vistage, and you do that with the whole leadership team in a session together, and everyone is aligned. There's a lot of power in that.
Mm-hmm. And so before we get into, how you are now out there helping other organizations implement EOS into their business, your first experience with it was utilizing it yourself. And so I think you said, it was fantastic to have implemented that and pre-COVID. So talk me through a little bit around how you actually implemented it in your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing we did was we had a meeting with Daniel Davis. So he was our implementer, and he basically just gave us all an overview in 90 minutes. And the biggest challenge for us was, who are we going to invite in? We had 100 staff, but we had no leadership team. So we grabbed our best people and we just got started and learned about it and had a conversation around, what our issues actually were, so that we could see how EOS could help us. And then we got together for a whole day, beautiful session room. And interestingly, the first session was not on vision building. A lot of people start with trying to know exactly where they're heading, but most people actually know roughly where you're going. And the first session that he ran with us was really more around structure. So structure, obviously, is required to execute, and a lot of people don't realize how important the right organizational structure is. We call it accountability structure. So that exercise would have taken us 3 or 4 hours, believe it or not, to really dive into blank piece of paper, 6 to 12 months from now, with where we want to be. What do we need in terms of structure? Do we need a sales team, or is sales and marketing together? What does our ops team look like? Where does customer service fit? Is supply chain separate? We had a big focus on supply chain. So we actually ended up having a whole team just on its own for supply chain. And so really nutting that out as a team as to what's the best structure that will support us in the right way to get to where we want to go. That probably gave us a lot of clarity on what roles were required to be filled, and then to work out, do we have right people, right seats, and where are the gaps, so that we can really move forwards with that. But yeah, in that meeting, we also really learned about a lot of really, really simple things. How to run an effective meeting. So much time, Richard, these days is wasted in one-on-ones, meetings that don't go anywhere, meetings where you just update people, meetings where people fall asleep or just one person talks. So yeah, for us, it was just back to basics. What's the structure we need? What sort of scorecard do we need to know whether what we're doing is working? How do we run effective meetings? And how to become a better leadership team, really. That was the first session. And then we had another session where we did the vision building, really nailing everything from core values, our purpose, our 10-year target, 3-year picture, 1-year plan, to then really building really strong plans and then having quarterly meetings. So every quarter we would come back together to reassess. And, it was pretty frustrating because we would spend so much time setting rocks in that session, really arguing what's important, what's not important, because initially you have this massive list of things that absolutely needs to be done in the next 90 days. But realistically, you can't do it all. You can't do it all in 90 days. And so it was a pretty tough conversation as a team to say what's in and what's out. But a really important conversation, what do you not work on? What can you put on the parking bench so you've got more clarity and confidence to actually deliver on those 90-day priorities and blocks. Yeah.
Right.
So
And so you engaged this fellow to assist you with that. And so how long was he engaged with your business? Was it simply a case of coming in and running, a few of these sort of discovery type sessions and then over to you, or did you sort of keep him as part of the consulting team for a period of time?
yeah, we actually saw him more as part of our leadership team. He almost became like one of us.
Right.
And even during COVID, we would still meet. We had moved the business to Queensland, and he was still in Sydney. So we would meet in the border bubble and still have sessions with him. So that was fantastic there at Kingscliff. And it was really important to really keep that momentum going, because you don't know what you don't know. And having an experienced facilitator made all the difference, in all honesty. So we went to all lengths to keep that going as long as we could, and learn so much from it. It's usually a 2-year journey, to really sort of every quarter come together as a team, as a leadership team with a facilitator. But eventually it's part of your DNA. It's just how you do business, and you don't need anyone to come along anymore. You might then only get someone to come along for your annuals. So for like a 2-day annual planning activity where, you go into more depth in terms of SWOT analysis and, really doing some trust exercises and team health work and so forth. That's nice to have a facilitator. Mm-hmm. But once you're up and running, you don't necessarily need a facilitator anymore.
Right. And so what was it about it that you thought, this is so good, I need to actually, move my career to being a facilitator yourself?
Yeah, well, I became really passionate about it, obviously. And I just saw the difference it made for businesses, and the difference it made on people and their life, because they got more excited to come to work every day. They had a purpose. The business was purpose driven. There was a good culture, a good vibe, because we had to find the values. And to be very honest with you, I didn't love working with my own partner. So, and being a mum too, I wanted a part-time job where I can take school holidays off. So that absolutely played a role as well. But I think it's also learning what your superpower is. So we talk about that a lot. We talk about, what are the things that you love and are great at versus the things that, you don't like or you're not good at. Because you really don't want to drain your energy with those things that either you should delegate because really it's a $20 an hour job, or because it actually is not you. It's not your superpower. It's like writing with your left hand. It really drains your energy. It's not you. And this facilitation work, that's me. It energizes me, and I just really enjoy getting really close to people, getting the best out of the teams, connecting with them, learning about new businesses, seeing what their challenges are, their pain points, especially when you've got your own business going. You understand how hard it is to run a business. You understand cash flow problems. You understand sleepless nights. You understand that it's all well and good in theory, but, very different in practice. So I never, preach like I'm perfect. I'm not. And that is the beauty about it, is that, with that EOS model, you have a framework you can go back to, that when things are out of control and you feel stuck, you can go back, right, where are we stuck? What do we need to do? And it really calms things down and gives people confidence and clarity. And I love that. I love people feeling good about what they do and love doing what they do.
Right, fantastic. And so, one of the things I remember from the presentation you gave was this idea of rocket fuel, and certainly different to the kind of rocket fuel that I enjoyed back in my teenage years. But tell us about rocket fuel. What does that mean?
Yeah. It's actually one of the biggest and most important concepts that we talk about when we talk about, EOS, and there's actually a book written on it. So have you had a chance to look at that, Richard? I remember recommending it to you.
I do have it, but it's in the pile.
It's in the pile. Amazing. It's a good little book. good little book written by Gino Wickman. And it's really around that concept that every really great business needs two very different types of leaders in the business. And they're very different people, but both are required. So it's really when you get that perfect match of those two very different leaders, you create rocket fuel. And it's basically having on the one hand a really strong visionary that's really creative and comes to work with lots of ideas, lives in the future. They live 10 years ahead, right? They drive everyone crazy because they have so many ideas. And it's brilliant because it fuels the whole organization with energy and it gives you a really strong vision. But without the integrator, the second person, that's very different to the visionary. It's very hard to execute on that vision. So that's basically asking organization, well, do you have that perfect combination of a visionary and an integrator? Where yes, you have that one, high-level founder, CEO, but on the other hand, you have someone that's happy in the day-to-day, happy to orchestra the team, excited to deal with people issues, excited to resolve issues and the nitty-gritty and living, week by week, looking at how can we get this done? How can we move forward? How can we absolutely deliver on that vision to make it happen? And yeah, that concept of, there's a bit of an assessment in that book. So it's called the crystallizer assessment, and really understanding whether you're more of a visionary or more of an integrator can really help you not only run a successful business, but also be happier in life. Because more often than not, I see visionaries stuck in the integrator seat. So, they founded the business, but they can't, keep dreaming and living in the future because they get pulled into the weeds nonstop, and they're constantly down on the ground and should be up a level, if that makes sense. And I've seen the opposite as well, where you have an integrator, but with the world, with how fast it's moving, they don't have enough ideas, they don't see the future, they can't really predict far enough to really stay ahead of the game. Right. So it's really finding that perfect combination that gives you that rocket fuel.
Yeah, look, it sounds like you've been looking in my business because that is definitely, as a founder, leader, and entrepreneur, it is exhausting to keep getting drawn back down into the day-to-day grind of, BAU. But I imagine for a lot of, people like myself, they might have somebody in that role, or it may be that they haven't invested in building that person within their business yet. Do you find that when organizations are coming to you, they typically already have both of those people in situ? They're probably just not firing properly yet, or is it even preceding that?
Good question. So I see all sorts of organizations. They're all different, Richard. So some have the visionary sort of founder owner still in the business, but haven't really nailed bringing in an integrator, if that makes sense. So that's very, very common. I've also seen the combination you described, where you have both, but they're not firing, and they just need to basically, get the right structure in place and same page meetings happening to really be on the same page. But I've also seen a lot of conflict where you have multiple people that are visionary and it just doesn't work because, you can't have two bosses. You can't have, misalignment around, where you think you should head and, a vision within a vision. We had that at EOS worldwide just recently. So I'll share the story where, we had the IT department create a big vision around actually building more of a software company. So EOS 1 was created, and everyone all of a sudden thought this was all about just the software, when EOS really is around, having facilitators work with companies to really create that rocket fuel. The software is just a tool. It's just one little component. So that created a lot of misalignment. So yeah, to answer your question, you see all sorts of different combinations. Sometimes you just got to learn to work together. The best case scenario is if you have both seats filled with the right people. If you don't have a visionary but an integrator, you can still run a really good business though, because often that's the more important component, to be very honest.
Sure. And so obviously the mindset and the things that get people excited about what they do, can often be quite different. And so if you're coming into a situation where you've got these people in there, but there is some fracture or, lack of cohesion in terms of how to best move forward, how do you get those different types of people excited and committed to a common goal moving in the same direction?
Oh, we are really open and honest in that room when we're there together. So we develop the vision together. And if there's conflict or disagreement, we bring it on the table. Like we do the check-in in the first minute, any elephants in the room, we put it straight out there and really discuss it. And if you can't align, then the CEO needs to make a call, and if people can't get excited, then they're not the right person to be on the team to really row in the same direction with excitement, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly, but really what you want to do is workshop a vision with the whole team, heavily led obviously by the visionary. But if there's someone that really doesn't see it, no matter what you do, they might not be the right person for the team either.
Right. And so do you find when you start working with companies, there is a bit of recalibration and, making sure that people are in the right seats and they understand what the priorities are for that particular seat and, perhaps they need to get off and get on a different bus?
100%. I mean, that's what I'm saying. The first session, that's exactly what we do. So it's quite confronting because we workshop that, structure that's required. And once we know what the requirements are of every role, we actually put names in and we say, well, do we have right person, right seat? And I think the most people issues ever identified in any of my sessions was 16. So in one session, we identified 16 right people, right seat issues, whether, they were the wrong person or we had no person. That was quite a large organization, but that was the first thing that needed to happen in those first 3 to 6 months is really looking at, okay, how can we create a people plan to fill those seats with right people, right seats? Because naturally, when you are in a business that's just growing, an entrepreneurial business, you just chuck people in wherever, you need them. Sometimes you have a technical expert and you just put them into the, tech team's leadership role when really they're not really a leader. They were very good at their technical role, but they're now really struggling with the role they got put into. So it's really being open and honest, and for the greater good of the company, everyone's just saying, hey, yeah, that's me, that's good. We have a gap here. What are we going to do? And we're not going to make changes overnight, but 3 to 6 months from now, usually there are changes that happen.
I imagine that for some business owners or CEOs, there would almost be some fear. I've got I know that, we're stuck here. The team's losing morale. I don't really know how to move this forward, but potentially, this is going to uncover some, issues that I don't really want to have to deal with right now.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of having a facilitator there. And I've had so many people be so grateful because when you create that safe space and everyone is in it for all the right reasons, you can really enter the danger and overcome that fear because you're not changing anything overnight. I don't make any decisions. I just ask good questions. I know the answers are always in the room. But yeah, you can have moments where you got to make a change. But if you don't make a change, you're not going to move forward. So you're just going to stay stuck. So sometimes you got to look at what is it that you need to do to push through that ceiling to get to the next level. And sometimes that is related to people. Other times it's not. Other times it's just being on the same page and having a better plan and having better tools to help you make it really easy to execute and really easy to drive a culture of accountability. Because I always say at the end of the day, everybody wants to do a good job. Yeah. Everybody wants to do a good job. Everyone means well. So if you can find people's superpowers and put them into the right seat and they're part of a the right crew, they fit the company values, there's a good culture, you can get everything humming. So yes, there can be fear, but I find people get comfortable really quickly as they just trust the process.
Right. So perhaps without, breaching any confidentiality, share with us a couple of case studies of organizations you've worked with, perhaps what you walked into and some of the things that they've been able to implement with your support that have been able to enable them to, get things moving and lead towards greater outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely. So the company I mentioned earlier, where we identified a lot of right people, right seat issues, they had a structure where each person had 2 bosses.
Right.
So that was very interesting because it's a bit like, if I can't get what I want from mom, I go to dad. It really wasn't the ideal structure. And
Sure.
they really didn't see it before. And they'd been running for successfully growing, profitable for 10 years. But it really stopped them from continuing with that growth because they wanted to expand geographically. So that was a real big aha moment for them and really helped them restructure and actually cut out a lot of inefficiencies and make the team humming a lot better. I had another company that actually started with me very early on my journey, and it was a family business. So the dad founded the business, the son was running it with dad in the visionary role. And I just really loved watching that journey because the son is just so good and perfect for that integrator seat, that he wasn't in before he started on the journey because dad was doing everything. And dad is so happy now, just enjoying his trips on his boat and, just rocking up for the quarterly sessions and seeing his son flourish and the whole leadership team. And the whole leadership team have been commenting the son in front of the dad about how well he's doing and how much better the meetings are and how they now have a place, a structure to compartmentalize issues, and it doesn't just fall on dad's place or the son's place. It has a place to go. They know which team it belongs to, which meeting it should be, dealt with. So yeah, for me, that was really, really, really enjoyable because, it's a family business and seeing that flourish in that way was quite special.
Right. And so in that example, the son was already working in the business?
He was.
And so was it more so that you were able to give him some tools to make his own work more effective?
Not just his own work. So what I try and do is really help companies go from founder-led to leadership team-led.
Right.
So, if one person gets hit by a bus, nothing falls over. And that's really important. And because everyone is in the room, everyone learns about the tools, everyone knows what the vision is, it's shared by all, everyone knows how to run effective meetings and what the priorities are for the quarter and what the key priorities are. It makes it really easy. Like you said, it gave him the confidence to actually run leadership meetings and really on a day-to-day basis execute on what needed to happen.
Right. And so in that situation, again, that particular example, you went in and did your initial sort of discovery sessions and setting the scene and building vision and so on. And then moving forward now, how do you work with that business?
Look, interestingly, even though they were one of my first clients, they're still coming in every quarter.
Right.
So every quarter, every annual, because they see the value. But not everyone does that. Other people, like I said, they just get me in for an annual planning session because they're just happy to run the quarterlies on their own. But to be honest, I'm available to them anytime. Most of the time, though, they're so busy executing on what they decided were the most important things to do for the quarter, they don't even have time to call me. So
Sure.
sometimes I join annual breakfast events. Sometimes I join their weekly meetings to give them feedback on how they're running. Sometimes I come in to cascade it throughout the organization, because that's really, really important as well. And I love doing it, mid-management level. Having a focus topic on how to run one-on-ones well, we call them quarterly conversations. There are certain ways of how people still engage me in different ways at times. And in this case, they just stick to the standard, and every quarter we get together.
Okay, great. And so what are some of the questions that a business owner should be asking themselves to think, do I reach out to EOS to help me? Yeah, what are some of the ways to do that self-assessment?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, the most common issues we see that EOS helps with is people issues. B, if you feel you've hit a plateau, you're feeling stuck, whether that's internal growth or external growth, revenue, but also feeling really under the pump, not having enough time, just feeling busy. So EOS really helps you with being less busy.
Right.
Because if everything is important, nothing is important. And if you're too busy, you're not going to be successful ever. So it's really around that clarity to create more time by actually, cutting out all the noise, and really being really clear and creating more time by being focused on your priorities. So it's the key issues that people struggle with that then means they're reaching out is either they're having people issues, they don't have enough time to do what they need to do. They feel they keep spinning the wheel. They're not growing the way they want. They've reached a bit of a plateau, and they're frustrated. So if everything is humming perfectly and you feel like you've got a well-oiled machine and you're off doing what you love doing, you might not need EOS. You're doing a good job. So we always say we try and help people live the best life, live the EOS life, and what we mean by that, and it's true for me. It's do what you love with people you love, making a big difference.
Yeah.
With time for other passions, but also being rewarded accordingly. So we want businesses to make money.
Fair enough. Well, it all sounds very attractive to myself, and running a business now for nearly 17 years. And it often feels like one step forward, two steps back, occasionally two steps forward, one step back. But the life of the entrepreneurial business owner is not for the faint-hearted, is it?
No, but that's the joys, isn't it? If it was easy, everyone would do it.
Well, I suppose so. And so coming back to yourself, what are the things that you're excited about for your future professionally?
For my future professionally, great question. Well, with our family business, I guess we're looking at taking it global. So I'm very excited about that. And we've really embraced AI a lot and sort of automated a lot of the manufacturing that we're doing. But with EOS, every day is different because every business is different. I am honestly happy every time I meet a new client and really work hard to deeply understand the business. I really don't want to come in and just be one of these people, that gets forgotten about and a folder goes on the shelf. I really love getting out there, getting to know business owners, the history. Like last week, I ran a session. I had 10 people in the room, which is very rare. And one of the guys is actually writing a book on the company's history, 100-year history.
Right.
And I mean, the stories is just so beautiful. So, where do I want to go? I want to do exactly what I'm doing right now because I just love learning about businesses, where they originated, how they pivoted, how they've stayed around for that long, and make sure that continues, especially with how fast the world is moving.
Okay, well, that's fantastic. And are you still kayaking for pleasure?
I do. I live on the water, so I live on the canal, and I play beach volleyball. I love hiking and skiing and, just staying active as much as I can. So, yeah, absolutely. Kayaking is a big, big passion of mine.
Oh, that's excellent. And so before we wrap it up, is there anything else you wanted to add or anything that I didn't ask you hoped I would have?
No, there's not. I just think, that big message for me is life is short. Live it to its fullest. Like, I really mean that. That's always been my thing, that don't just keep spinning the wheel. You got to stop, you got to pause, slow down to speed up. I think that was in one of your other podcasts, recently.
Right.
And it's so true, because if you don't, all of a sudden something happens and you've missed out on all the things that you wanted to enjoy. So it's really, really important to take time away from the business to gain clarity, and then really gain clarity within the business to make sure it's not all relying on you.
Indeed. Well, a great message there to end with, and we'll make sure that we put your contact details in our show notes and so on. So if anybody's listening and they're interested in learning more, I certainly would recommend that they have a chat to you, and really appreciate your time. Have a fantastic afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you for listening to the Arete podcast with Richard Triggs. We frequently feature guests from organisations we are currently recruiting to build the company brand as an attraction strategy for candidates. If you would like to promote your organisation's brand as an employer of choice, please contact Richard directly on 0403 588 517 or via email richardt@areteexecutive.com.au.